There's one position that isn't just important for Ohio State anymore. In 2026, it might be the single most important on the roster, the one that decides whether this team takes the next step or hits the same ceiling we've seen them hit before. Not when they won a national championship, because that year they did excel at this position. And the scariest part of this is the projected starters for this group are a sophomore, a fifth-year transfer from Northwestern, and the number 1,298th player in the transfer portal. And it's not just because the position is important for Ohio State, but because the position has secretly become one of the most important positions in college football over the past few years. That position is the tight end position. Today on the Buckeye Huddle podcast, we're breaking down why the tight end room is so important in college football today, or just really the entire position, not so much the room, but the entire position is so important in college football today, how the Buckeyes recover off the loss of 2 NFL draft picks, and how this group has a legitimate chance to be even better under Arthur Smith, but also why it carries real risk if the development doesn't happen fast enough this spring and summer. Before we get started, you know me, I'm Jon Rhoades, also known as JR, the newest member of Buckeye Huddle. I'm so glad that you are watching this video, continuing to consume Buckeye Huddle. If you're on the message board, we appreciate you being there. If you're not on the message board, go over there, check it out with other great contributors. Kevin Noon is over there, Mark Givler, Andrew Ellis, and according to Mark, there are more coming as well. So we'll see what that has in store. But let's get into the meat of this video, because this offseason, we lost Max Clare and Will Kazmarek, right? The real production and real physicality of the room is they have walked out the door. Clare was a mismatch nightmare in the passing game. He struggled a little bit when he came to get acclimated to Ohio State, but overall, he was a matchup nightmare in the passing game. Kazmarek brought the mauling presence that helped the run game so much last year when they needed it most. Ohio State took him from being a 2-star defensive line prospect, he went to Ohio as that, and then becoming a 3rd-round pick in the NFL draft at tight end. You don't just replace that with any bodies you can for portal. But the good news is that the Buckeyes are a reload program, not one who needs time to replace guys. And that's exactly why every Buckeye fan should be watching this position closer than almost any other this offseason. Here's what's actually happening right now with this position. Okay, the returning production from last year's room is extremely thin. Bennett Christian is the veteran leader coming back, but was out this spring, and then he's only seen 7 career catches. Now, he is still seen as a leader of this team and someone that Keenan Bailey has spoken highly of. He has the opportunities he had the opportunity to leave like Jelani Thurman did, but he elected to stick it out and continue to compete because he believes in himself and he loves being a Buckeye. The other one is Nate Roberts, a sophomore who flashed as a true freshman fullback, had 4 catches for 30 yards. Many people saw him as the fullback and thought he didn't have what it took to play tight end, but I see it as a huge indictment on him as a player. He not only had the willingness to do something different for the team, but that he was also to be trusted as just a true freshman to be in there at a new position, something that he could learn and be able to call his own. But that's not all they have. The Buckeyes went into the portal, added 2 veterans, Hunter Welcing from Northwestern and Mason Williams from Ohio, right? Everybody thinks of Will Kazmarek of Mason Williams. Not exactly, a proper comparison there, but still, that's what everybody thinks of. Both bring experience in blocking ability. True freshman Nick Lauder is enrolled and participating. You got redshirt freshman Max LeBlanc and redshirt sophomore Max LeBlanc, and redshirt freshman Brody Lennon are also in the mix as well. On the first day of spring practice, it was Nate Roberts who was leading the group. So he's automatically the one that we're going to think of as the guy who is going to be the starter here because he's the one leading the group. Tight ends coach Keenan Bailey has been very public about his belief in Roberts, and he showed that also when he recruited Roberts by essentially going all in on this tight end over other prospects that he could have went after. His weight room work, his maturity, the fact that this kid's first college snap was on 4th and 1 on a touchdown run as a true freshman against the number 1 team in the country should tell us all we need to know about his work ethic and how much the coaches. Bailey even acknowledged it by talking about how sometimes people think of Roberts as a young guy because he's only been there 1 year, but he's already played a lot of football. Already played more football than some true freshmen did for Ohio State. The staff lost around 90% of last year's tight end production statistically, but they don't believe they have players who can, but they believe, I apologize, but they believe they have players who can step up because they've played football at a high level for a good amount of time. That's the optimistic news that gives us assurance the room has potential, but the room matters more than just the room has more that matters than just potential, because as Urban Meyer used to say, potential is just talent that hasn't performed yet. And that absolutely matters more than most people realize, because there isn't time for the talent to be realized. It needs to happen, and it needs to happen now. Because across college football, the tight end position has evolved from just a blocking afterthought into one of the most valuable chess pieces in the game. League-wide, we're seeing more 12 and 13 personnel packages than we've seen in a while. Tight ends are being asked to block defensive ends, motion into the slot, create mismatches against linebackers and safeties, and contribute in the passing game on play action and intermediate routes. Not just Ohio State increasing their usage. That was a big talking point for Ohio State last year, how they're increasing their usage, but it's happening all over college football. And if you have a weakness at tight end, the smart defensive coordinators, right? Not everyone, but the smart defensive coordinators, they'll find it and they will exploit it. The physical multiple front style of Big Ten defenses has actually accelerated this trend. Teams that can win with tight ends have a built-in advantage in the later months of November and January, November to January, pretty much, because you do play some games in December. Arthur Smith understands that better than most. He spent 16 years in the NFL and consistently built offenses he specifically built offenses where tight ends were featured well in his recent stops, right? In his recent stops, tight ends accounted for over 25% of teams' receiving production in multiple seasons, sometimes significantly more. And it wasn't just last year that Ohio State did that. In the past 3 seasons, Ohio State has had a tight end top 3 in receptions on their team twice. In that third season that they didn't, Ryan Day tight end was tied for 4th in receptions, right? You got guys like Cade Stover, Max Clare last year, 2 years ago, G. Scott. But it's not just receiving Smith wants out of his tight ends. Smith wants physical, run game action, get to the second level, knock the dude on his butt, and keep going to the next player. He wants play action. He wants multiple tight end sets that force defenses to declare their intentions. Arthur Smith uses tight ends as a foundational moving chess piece to create numbers advantages and geometric leverages in his run blocking schemes. Kind of like how Urban Meyer loved to use the quarterback to even out the numbers in the blocking and the blockers and the defenders. But for Smith, rather than viewing tight ends as strictly pass catchers, Smith designs his entire offense around heavy personnel packages, frequently leading the NFL in 12 personnel, that's 2 tight ends, and 13 personnel, that's when you have 3 tight ends. All right. The first number is the number of backs you have. The second number is essentially the number of tight ends you have. By utilizing physically imposing tight ends, he forces defenses who have heavily invested in their light sub packages like nickel and things like that, and manually dictates the geometry of the line of scrimmage. What makes Smith's use of tight ends truly effective is his pre-snap motion and alignment disguises. He will present the defense with the exact same 12 personnel look. That's where 2 tight ends, right? On 3 consecutive plays, using the tight ends to run, outside zone. That's when everybody's kind of moving to the outside. They're blocking together. Split zone when they're heading up the middle or whatever it might be on second down. And then a heavy and bootleg on the third play there. This forces defenders to hesitate, neutralizing their speed and allowing his tight end runes to win their blocking assignments through sheer positioning and leverage. Because when the tight end is going downhill and confident in what he's doing, but the defender is second guessing himself, you have the advantage there. Just like how defenses are trying to disguise their defense, Smith wants to multiply his offense so you don't see a formation and know a group of possible plays. You see a formation and know that every single play is on the table to happen. Last year's offense leaned heavily on Claire's receiving ability, Kaczmarek's blocking and size, and Kaczmarek had some receiving ability as well. I don't want to completely discount him, but this year's group doesn't have the direct one-for-one replacement for either one of them. Mason Williams has some H-back experience and 45 receptions past 2 seasons at Ohio, but he's not the same like 260-pound absolute mauler that Will Kaczmarek was. The question isn't just who catches the ball, it's who becomes the physical presence that makes the run game play action work. That's where Nate Roberts comes into play. The staff didn't hand him the fullback role last year just to make him a fullback. They were developing him for this moment. They knew they were going to have a dude come in, and Nate Roberts is going to be that guy, I believe. Bailey has said that Roberts took a noticeable step in the weight room this offseason, far and away the top performer in winter workouts. Let's hope he's an Iron Buckeye. That would be huge for them to be able to do that. That's why he got the first crack with the ones in the spring. And then Roberts has the athleticism and speed. I'm talking about Iron Buckeye for the summer. Let's hope that turns into that is what I'm saying. And now the strengths to play in line as well. Motion, he contributes as a receiver. If he can pair consistent production with the blocking the staff needs, he becomes exactly the kind of weapon that Arthur Smith loves to use. The transfers help the transition as well, as Welcing and Williams bring veteran presence and blocking experience that the young guys can learn from. Both are seniors and proven and is, a proven older tight end. It's been proven that older tight ends are better in college football because they have completed the physical and mental transition that requires the sport's most complex position. While a true freshman wide receiver or running back can rely on raw speed, make an immediate impact, tight ends have a function as both a wide receiver and an offensive lineman. And they also have Bennett Christian, who, when healthy, provides leadership and in the blocking game, right? This is why, to me, the 5-for-5 rule is so important. We're not going to get deep into this, but I do think it's so important for positions like the offensive line and tight end for Ohio State, not just for them to develop guys for 5 years, but for them to be able to go into the portal and get some guys like this as well. But we also have to be honest about the risk here. If this room develops blocker receiver combination quickly, the new offense could stall, and what they do could become very evident to the defenses if guys cannot perform both roles. Kaczmarek's don't just grow on trees, and Max Clair has serious issues with the physicality had physical issues. I apologize, with the physicality of Ohio State when he came in, and now Ohio State is bringing in the Northwestern transfer, Hunter Welcing. If Arthur Smith wants to run the ball and use play action the way I think he does, those conditions have to hit. These tight ends will need to win at the point of attack and then threaten the immediate seams as well. If the blocking isn't there, the receiving threat or the receiving aren't quite consistent enough in critical moments, the best defensive coordinator, guys like Phil Parker, Will Muschamp, Jay Williams, Gary Patterson, and especially Brian Haynes, all guys that Ohio State faced this season, can load the box or take away the play action fakes. In the Big Ten, where fronts are physical and linebackers run, that shows up on the scoreboard in October and November. This is why summer and preseason practices matter so much right now. A lot of times you get the recruiting camps to get the talking, but the real work is done in the weight room. The staff is evaluating who can be the mauler and who can be the mismatch creator, right? We need to see an Iron Buckeye or two come out of this tight end room here after this summer. They're asking the room to become more reliable, more physical, and more productive together, not just as individuals. The best case scenario here is that somebody, or hopefully a combination of dudes, that would really be the best case scenario, steps up as true every down contributors. The offense doesn't gain a dimension, or the offense would gain a dimension it hasn't had consistently. And we look back and say 2026 was the year the tight end. It became a featured part of what Ohio State does and was actually reliable and not just something Ohio State was trying to shoehorn in there. The opportunity is there for a reason most people aren't talking about. You see, the trio of Julian Sayin, Bo Jackson, and Jeremiah Smith are going to be great, and they demand attention. We just talked about them on a previous video, okay? Brock Boyd, Chris Henry Jr., they're going to be pieces defenses need to watch out for whenever they're on the field, and the offensive line is ready to come back and hopefully dominate this year with 4 returning starters and an offensive line focused guru at offensive coordinator. That leaves space underneath and in the run game for tight ends to operate. In play action, a tight end who can freeze a linebacker or a safety for half a second creates explosive plays. In the run game, a tight end who can seal or climb to the second level changes what linebackers can do. When the tight end room is playing at a high level, it makes the entire offense harder to defend. Decides he's going to start creeping up to the line of scrimmage. He doesn't know if he's going to have to turn and run up the seam, with the tight end, or if he's going to get blasted and put on his butt. Right? That's the make or break reality for 2026. If the tight end room hits, this offense becomes more balanced, more physical, and more difficult to game plan for. It gives Ryan Day and Arthur Smith more answers on third downs in the red zone and in critical moments. It creates draftable talent. It fits the identity Smith wants to build. If they don't, if the room stays inconsistent or the blocking doesn't reach the level needed, the offense can become predictable. The run game can suffer, and we're back to relying too heavily on the skill positions to create everything for the offense. We Buckeyes have seen what happens when that becomes the reality, when the supporting pieces around the stars aren't good enough. Ohio State's always going to have stars. They're always going to have the best of the best. That's what they produce. But you have to get the pieces around the stars. This is the year the supporting pieces at tight end have to be good enough, not necessarily be the stars, but have to be good enough to support the star players. The chance to be more than that. The staff believes in Nate Roberts. They've added veteran transfers for a reason. They have young athletic pieces developing, and they have Bennett Christian, who's a leader in that room. Arthur Smith's scheme gives this position a clearer role, more opportunity than it's had in recent years. The production gap is real, but the opportunity to close it and even exceed what we've already seen recently is also real. This summer will tell us a lot by what we hear coming out of the weight room, what we hear coming out of different areas of practice and working with the coaches. By fall camp, we should have a much clearer picture of who this tight end room is and what it can become. Buckeye fans should be watching every rep they possibly can. The first 3 practices you can go to, keep your eye on the tight ends there. This isn't a position you can ignore anymore. And of course, we won't ignore it here on Buckeye Huddle. We'll treat the tight end position as we know it is because it has become one of the most important positions in modern college football. For the 2026 Ohio State Buckeyes, it might be the position that defines the season the most. The pieces are in place. The scheme fits. The opportunity is real. Now it's about development, chemistry, and execution between now and August/September, whenever I guess the season really starts in September because that's when they play Texas, right? Buckeye fans, this is one to watch closely. The tight end room has a chance to be a real strength, not just a replacement, but an upgrade in how this offense attacks defenses. If it happens, it changes what this team can do in the Big Ten and beyond. If you want clear, honest Buckeye analysis without the national media spin, the kind that actually helps you understand the program better, subscribe to Buckeye Huddle and join the message board here with us here. Drop your takes on the tight end room down in the comments below. Would love to hear what you guys are saying. Would love to hear what you guys are thinking. And who do you think steps up as a leader? Is Nate Roberts ready to be that guy? And what are you listening for this summer? What more videos do you kind of want stuff on? Would love to hear your thoughts there. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.